Now, the animals were alone, and for all they knew, completely deserted. Silence fell upon the scene, a silence that seemed to stretch away to the ends of the earth. Then voices spoke. Wild geese calling. Wild geese going home. Somehow this was an urge the young dog could understand. For in him, the homing instinct was strong, too.
This is the emergency podcast system. This is not a test. Movies are bombing all over the country. They are posing as movies you already know. They may already be in your theaters, your neighbor's home, or even your own. Do not panic. Specialists have been dispatched. They will help you identify these pretenders and defend you against this invasion of the remake. Please stand by for further instructions.
Welcome to the Invasion of the Remake podcast. I am your host, Jason Bishop, and with me today, as always, is Sam Stepanenko.
No leashes on me. Well, except for when there are.
Ooh, kinky.
Oh, wow. Okay, see, I would have gone Sam Stepanenko Unleashed would probably work better than not in a leash.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. What you do it your own.
Isn't you true?
That's right. Trish Conklin, everybody.
Hey, wait, now I'm thinking of harnesses. Is that part of it too?
And he's always hanging around begging for food. Jeff Omega?
I have a new leash on life.
Oh,
That was J quality. That was awesome.
I'm better than that. I'm way better than that.
No, you're not.
Hey, at least I tried.
Oh,
Okay, now that's bad. Okay, Jay, Jeff just redeemed you. How about that?
thank you.
That's what happens when you bark up the wrong tree.
Okay, you can stop now.
Are we going to be doing this whole episode?
No.
I know, things are getting a little hairy around here.
That's right.
Can we get started, meow?
I'm going to get barking mad. So yeah, we're going to be talking about pets. Pets that don't know how to stay in the yard. We're going to be talking about the classic Incredible Journey from 1963 from Walt Disney and its 1993 remake, Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey. These rate about the same when you look at Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, so we're favorites regardless of generation, despite being 30 years apart. And, man, 30 years, they're just about due to do it again, I would think. I'm sure this time it would just CGI all the pets.
Yeah. One thing I will say is, like, I grew up with the remake, Homeward Bound. And as an adult, they're kind of a little bit more harrowing to watch. Just, like, here's a cat thrown in with lynx or a bear. And it's like, I know that they're trained, but Disney, luckily, these movies, I did a bunch of research. The animals were treated all well, other than maybe being put into some scary situations,
and not as scary as you might think, because these movies are testament to editing. So to get an animal to go one place to another, it's just an A/B thing. So they're either calling the animal over or with food or whatever. So when there's a cougar in a scene, they're not shooting it at the same time. So that cougar's stalking them, but at no point are they in the scene at the same time.
Yeah.
So there's no risk.
I noticed was much. It used a lot more camera tricks. Like when the bear is in the same frame as them, it's like shot in a way where it's just a forced perspective to make it look like they're closer than they are. Yeah, the second one is actually pretty clever in how they executed everything.
Yeah.
Being that clever to make a film, it's always fun to watch and see how they did it. Knowing that the animals were well treated, and in some cases, the animals that look like they're in peril, were actually having a good old time. So
yeah. Well, they had Disney didn't have the best track record at certain points for this.
No, but by 63,
By 63, but around, I think it was the early 60s, that whole thing with the lemmings, which was filmed here, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Where they threw
I found that
lemmings
out.
into the Elbow River.
That was
crazy.
here.
Yeah, they threw them into the Bow River.
Wow.
And apparently
I think it was
a bunch of other
Head
stuff from that
Smashing,
movie was shot in a soundstage here, too.
Yep, it was in Calgary.
So was that head smashed buffalo jump? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's where some of it was.
That's so ironic.
Yeah.
Well, the original Incredible Journey was also filmed in Canada, more around Toronto area. Lots of Toronto actors.
Lots of Toronto accents.
And Toronto accents. And some that weren't. I mean, there was some Canadian transplant actors here as well from other countries that were in this film, and their accents were very identifiable. The brief moments they were allowed to talk, because this movie has a lot of narration for the most part, not a lot of dialogue from the actors, but there is some. I mean, it is mostly the three animals with the two dogs and the cat. And then you get the remake where you just want them to shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
At least I did. But
I did too.
I mean, my childhood was the 63 one. Like, I wasn't born, and it was around a good decade before I was even around. But by the time the remake came around, I was 20. So it wasn't part of my childhood, that remake. And so I don't have the same love for it. And I just okay, this nonstop talking was starting to drive me nuts with the animals.
Oh, really? I found I liked the narration in the original one, but I definitely thought that the animals having voices in the remake, especially during the scenes where she's in the river, there was a bunch of moments where it made it a lot more harrowing, or it really put you in their shoes more. So I think in some ways it was more successful, but in other ways it wasn't. Yeah,
you're getting into the animals' heads, which is generally an impossible feat otherwise. And one of the few times where they didn't try to feed them peanut butter and make it look like they're actually talking, which I'm kind of appreciated that they didn't bother.
Yeah.
Well, because they weren't supposed to be talking animals. They were supposed to. You were supposed to get that sense of what they might be thinking. And I mean, I liked the fact that they used sort of Michael J. Fox primarily in that narration role, because he was telling most of the story. Mm-hmm. So it did feel like narration, but I've never been a fan of that whole talking animal thing, even though they weren't really talking. And so I have to admit that I really enjoyed the narration of the 63 version much better myself.
Yeah, I kind of preferred it, but you get a little more personal touch. They were trying to get a little more emotional storytelling within the remake by getting into those animals' heads, and specifically the Michael J. Fox character of Chance, who had already been abandoned by previous owners and had gone to doggy jail and had a great fear of going back. So there's more of an emotional arc of character that we might not have seen in a G movie prior to this. There's still strength in the movie, and I think these movies are on fairly equal ground. It just depends on which one you grew up with that you're going to like the most. And
well, it was weird between the two of them, because I watched them back to back. And the first one, sort of at the point where they get to the mountains, or the last hardest bit, they skip over that, and then the animals get home. And that seemed to me as why would you miss the most compelling part? But in the remake, they just dive right into going over the mountains and very treacherous terrain, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, they just give you the mountains as a whole. But I found it was okay, here's the deck of cards. That was Incredible Journey, and they just shuffled it, and out came Homeward Bound. So you have all the same elements, but they've been mixed and matched a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the scene where Tao, or Sassy, whichever you want to call her, ends up in the river, that happens much earlier in Homeward Bound. Mm-hmm. And maybe it was just because I'd already watched Incredible Journey, but I just didn't feel the same sense of loss that I did when I watched the first one. In the second viewing, I didn't feel the same way. Partly because I didn't really get to know the animals quite as well before it happened. Mm-hmm. And in the 63 version, they established that these animals are very close and very fond of each other. And I think they broke that a little bit by making Chance a new member of the household and not really connecting, and kind of being a bit of an asshole, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Well, he was a pup, and he to tear clothes up and eat food, and just he'd go on a tear. So he had lots of energy, and you got this older dog that's can't keep up, and he's just rolls his eyes most of the time. And most cats don't give a shit, and that's kind of how this one went too.
Yeah, but that difference made it harder for me to enjoy, or I didn't feel as much during that scene because you didn't have that same sense of connection.
Yeah,
so these animals tolerated each other and weren't really friends or family, right? Whereas in the original, you got this sense that they were a family.
Yeah.
Well, they also they made them wait by the narrator is like, oh, they don't want to leave because they think that if they wait just a little longer, their friend might come back. And I think they dwell on the loss a lot more in the original one too.
Yes.
Yeah, and I get more of a sense too with Tao when Bodger is like really sore and really just like done, and the cat's just kind of like snuzzling up to him and like just going all over. But like that's something I've seen cats do. Like if you're in pain, sometimes they'll get on you and purr because purring helps heal you. Like there's a frequency. So I really got the sense that like they really loved each other and they were just looking out for each other the whole time.
Yeah, they do it very effectively. I mean, ironically, it's just hiding some food behind an ear or something.
But it looks better. Like it makes more sense.
Yeah,
I see that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we know, Jeff, this was Homeward Bound was part of your childhood, and how many times had you seen it? I know Homeward Bound is the one that spawned a couple more sequels.
I mean, as I kind of mentioned earlier, watching these movies again as adults, I was a little bit more, I enjoyed the movies and think they're well made. The stories are fine. Other stuff like, it is kind of hard to watch a cat swimming in rapids, like for real. And it's like, I can't help but feel a little bit bad for the cat actors because, I mean, especially as we mentioned, Disney at the time didn't really shy away from some kind of bad animal treatment in their movies, even though this wasn't one of them.
Well,
so I definitely think
Homeward Bound, it wasn't even a real cat that was being swept up. So it's good that you were fooled in thinking that. I don't know about The Incredible Journey because there's very little written about that one.
Yeah, I was really, really looking into it, and basically it all boils down to the animals were at times distressed, but ultimately they were okay and none of them were hurt. And that's fine. But yeah, I enjoyed watching them, but I don't know if I'd revisit them again. It's just a style of movie that I don't think we see a lot anymore, and probably for good reason.
Yeah, we still see the occasional animal movie, but they seem to be relegated to direct-to-video of the direct-to-video era. So it's been a long time, I think, since anything like this, Air Bud or whatever, has been done. These days, when you have movies with animals, they're just CGI'd in, and you can give them more human characteristics as a result.
Which is disappointing, because I understand what Jeff's saying, and I, to a certain extent, agree with him that these aren't movies that I want to go back and watch over and over and over again. But they do have a message that is sadly lacking in children's films in general today.
I agree.
About that spirit and family and sticking together and sticking it out. That's, I think, we need more of. And that's something that I would like to see more in these children's movies. And I think that we maybe are due for another version of this film or something that sort of takes that same message.
And sticking with each other, like you have dogs and cats who are like super buds. They're not antagonistic. They're like these different species that are perfectly happy traveling together.
Yeah, start perpetuating that myth, right? That the cats and dogs don't get along because they can and do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey. We all know from the great Bill Murray, cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria. All right, now it's time for the trailer for the original 1963, The Incredible Journey.
From Walt Disney, master of the unique, comes one of the most unusual and exciting adventures of our time, The Incredible Journey. Starring three of the most unlikely, the most incredible companions ever teamed for adventure on the motion picture screen. Lua, the rugged Labrador retriever, the hunter, born to be a leader. Bodger, the old, the wise, the battle-scarred bull terrier. And Teo, the shrewd, the sassy Siamese cat, three intrepid travelers who survived the incredible journey. A fascinating story of the courage and heartwarming devotion of three extraordinary house pets who, when separated from home and hearth by a strange twist of fate, fight their way back across 200 grueling miles of forbidding Canadian wilderness. Three musketeers, three incomparable comrades-at-arms, pitted against a menacing and hostile wilderness in The Incredible Journey. And yet, midst the challenges of the wild and the unfamiliar, they found unforgettable moments of friendship and welcomed hospitality.
Funny how they seem to know each other. I can't get over the affection these two show.
And there were moments of warmth and tenderness to gladden the hearts of all. The Incredible Journey, a once-in-a-lifetime story based upon Sheila Burnford's best-selling novel in its 14th printing by popular demand. And now, Walt Disney brings this amazing story to the screen in a memorable motion picture, 2 years in the making. See Walt Disney's The Incredible Journey, a unique motion picture experience. Always look to the name Walt Disney for the finest in family entertainment.
That was the Incredible Journey trailer from 1963, with the original novel being written by Sheila Burnford and the screenplay by James Alger, who had directed Fantasia 2000, The Jungle Book, and had been responsible for a good hunk of Disney's nature documentaries of that era. And that shows within this film, so that, especially when they're in the forest and stuff, you get to just watch the animals do what they do, which is good ad-libbing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one thing I was actually really thinking of while I was watching these is they really are massive achievements in editing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to be able to basically, even especially in the first one where you don't get to hear what's going on in their heads, where they're able to imply so much of their personality and what they're doing and their concerns and fears just mostly through editing. And you're right, it's just dogs and cats walking across a screen a lot of the time.
Yeah,
they're really able to convey a lot.
Yeah, point A to point B directing for the most part, and it's amazing what you can put together. You got to be patient, and the original trailer there said 2 years in the making, and I believe it. Because dogs and cats don't take the same directions as humans, and you're probably looking at multiple takes. And I bet you in the high numbers, too.
I imagine that would have been expensive, too, because that would have had to have been shot on film.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah, that wouldn't have been cheap on film stock, for sure. This was directed by Fletcher Markle, who directed a movie called Jigsaw. No, not that one. Studio One and Night into the Morning. But hey, just think about it. A Saw movie with animals? Huh? No, I don't want to see that.
No, most definitely not.
Starring, well, we got human actors that are getting all the billing, and you go to IMDb and you can't even get the dog names. It's very upsetting. But we have, I think the real stars of this show are the Bull Terrier, the Siamese cat, and the Labrador Retriever. And the characters are Bodger, Tao, and Louth as their respective animals. But this stars Emile Genest as John. He was in the Cincinnati Kid. John Draney, who is Professor Jim Hunter. He was in the Anne of Green Gables, a Canadian classic. Tommy Tweed was the Hermit. Was actually pretty funny, and generally speaking, he's a professional narrator for most of his professional career. Sandra Scott was Mrs. Hunter, and she was in a lot of TV and film in Canada, much like most of these actors were, like Sam Jaga, who is Helvie. She was in a show called The Mystery Maker. Marion Finlayson was Elizabeth Hunter, again, another star of television. Ronald Cahoon was Peter. Robert Christie was James. Beth Lockerbie was Nell. Jan Rubes was Carl. Irina Maeska was Mrs. Nurmi, and she was in a show called Partners in 1976. Belle Amos was Mrs. Oakes. She was in Prom Night, the original Prom Night. We'll have to do that someday. Somewhere around prom time, so maybe next May. Eric Clavering was Bert Oakes. Was in Mr. Scrooge and we had an entire episode about Scrooge and A Christmas Carol in episode 118, so you might want to check that out. And the narrator was professional screen cowboy Rex Allen.
Yeah, also narrated Charlotte's Web, famously.
Yes, did a lot of narration late in his career, but he was also very famous for being a cowboy, mainly himself. He played lots of cowboys, but his most famous one was Rex Allen.
But he does have a great voice for narration. I can see why he sort of went to that in his later career years.
Yeah, it's definitely a good way to end your career if you still want to stay active, but not cowboy active. And so somebody who's very in tune with nature as well from most of his other series. So yeah, it's a ton of work. I imagine the animal wrangler was probably the busiest guy on this set.
Yeah, because I mean, you guys were talking about how many takes it would take there, and you think about it, you're not dealing with one animal most of the time. You're dealing with three. One of them being a cat, which are notoriously hard to train.
And that cat has a pretty harrowing arc too. It
does, and I think it also does the hunting stuff, the fishing. So there's a lot that they had to do with that cat and get it to do believably.
Yeah, because the cat's the most efficient one outside as a hunter and provider for the rest of them. So yeah, that friendship was very reliant on that cat for a good hunk of that film. So when they lose the cat in the stream, it's like, it's bad for everybody.
They lead you to believe that she's died. Which, especially as a kid, I remember that being really, really powerful. And knowing it as an adult and having seen these movies, I know that she should get rescued. But it's really effective in the original as well, because when they find her inexplicably on a little raft made of sticks, just wanted to point that out. They believe that she's dead, right? Like even when they find her, they believe that she's dead.
Yeah.
In the remake, she's struggling, right? But she's alive.
Yeah. Well, initially he just sees a pile of fur, that dude. He probably did think he was dead until it purred.
For the cast list, one additional, that cat who played Tao, one of the feature cats in The Incredible Journey, is also DC in That Darn Cat, which is one of my favorite old Disney movies. So.
Oh, I remember that one. I loved it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it is a little bit of a cat celebrity. Two big Disney movies.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I wanted to figure out who the animal actors were and what their resumes look like. Because, Disney was known for doing quite a few animal films in the 60s and earlier. So, thankfully, this didn't fall in the same formula as their animated and other animal things where the animal usually dies in the film and crushes your soul.
Yeah, and that was nice, actually, was in the end that in both of them, no real animal, aside from some rabbits and stuff that they ate, I guess they did kind of kill some stuff, but
yeah, well, again, it's fakery on camera, but this is a story of survival, so they're going to have to eat.
Yeah, and exactly, but yeah, it was a lot more present in the original. Right? And
yeah, they took it away, and even the hunting stuff on the cat's part was kind of taken out of the remake as well, and making the cat look more prissy, which is probably why they named it Sassy, more of a princess.
Well, and Tao was supposedly male in the original, and they made Sassy Sally Field, right? So,
yeah. In the original novel, Tao's supposed to be a male.
Well, and at the end of the original, the mother does comment, they're like, oh, and then she's like, her daughter's convinced that Tao will come back being as sassy as ever.
Oh, that's probably where they pulled the name for the remake from.
Yeah, good catch.
Yeah.
To add to what Sam was saying, that was one aspect I actually did really like in The Incredible Journey, is how Tao is kind of the hunter, because, cats are very incredible hunters, and, indoor cats are not. Once they're put out into the wild, hunter mode does set in, and they're very, very efficient at finding food and taking care of themselves. So that was an aspect that I did think was lacking in the remake.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think that made the whole journey a little more believable. Mm-hmm. The other thing about the remake that I didn't get the sense of was a sense of time. It seemed like they weren't on this incredible journey anywhere near as long as they were in that first one. Because the first one, you knew it was weeks because they established that he was going away for 2 weeks right at the beginning there. And he had already been gone. And it was still time after that they were looking for them. So it was at least 3 weeks or a month that these animals were out in the wild. Whereas in the remake, she was gone for 2 days for a cattle drive or a horse drive, and she was back. So they were only gone for 2 days when they discovered they were missing. So you didn't get that same sense of drama because you didn't have that same sense of urgency. Well, they've already been gone for 3 weeks or 2 weeks, and there's no way they could survive for that long in the wild. Whereas 2 days, an animal could potentially survive that long in the wild because it wouldn't starve to death in 2 days. There's always the risk of predators and exposure, but cats and dogs are still pretty resourceful that kind of way. So that was something I felt took away from that sense of urgency that the original movie gave us.
Yeah, and I felt like with the older dog being the bull terrier in the original film, now in the remake was the leader pulling these guys across the mountains to go home. And the elder dog is a bit of a burden in that trip because it can only go so far before it needs rest and collapses even. And you can see what a tough toll that is on the older dog in the original film, where you don't get a sense of that until right near the end, but that dog's the one that's pushing everybody forward in Homeward Bound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was something else that I wanted to mention too, so I'm glad you did. The fact that Bodger was Bodger, right? Was the old one. Yeah, so he was struggling right from the outset. And that's, again, added to that whole sense of the peril that they really were in and how momentous this undertaking was going to be for them.
Yeah. And that danger with the bear was especially exacerbated because he was exhausted at that point.
Exactly.
It was terrifying because I was like, oh God, no. I know it works out, but I was still very upset most of the time. Yeah,
when the cubs kind of keep nudging him and trying to play with him and he's just not having any of it, you don't feel too bad. It's just the cubs being playful, but Mama Bear is probably fairly close, and that's not going to go so well.
Oh.
Especially when those bear cubs start wrestling and it sounds like they're in danger.
Yeah, those tiny little jerks. That's what I thought.
Yeah. But yeah, I just felt that the original did a really good job of creating that sense of tension and peril that just never quite hit in the remake. And I don't know if that was because somewhere along the line the filmmakers felt that, well, 90s audiences are more sensitive and we don't need to give them as much, or we don't want to overwhelm them with scaring them. It just felt like they shied away from it a little bit.
But I will say with the Sassy going in the water, in the original, she's kind of going down rapids, but in the remake, they throw her off a freaking waterfall, like a tall one.
There is that, yes.
She should be dead. That was the whole thing. I was like, I know it's an incredible journey, but that's a little too incredible.
And we've seen John McClane do worse.
True.
Yes.
Or The Fugitive, Harrison Ford.
I was thinking of that too, but I couldn't remember the character's name, so I didn't say anything.
Dr. Richard Kimball.
Yes. And yeah, he jumped off a dam, damn it.
Yeah.
I didn't do it. It was the one-armed man. I don't care.
Oh my God. Can you imagine like a remake of this movie where it's like a fugitive style thing and it's like a dog catcher? It's like, I didn't do it. It was the three-legged dog. I don't care.
Now, I don't even recall if I'd actually seen the sequels. Jeff, do you remember those? Maybe they did do it.
No, you know what? I actually... So we watched the first one, the second one. By the time I was done Homeward Bound, I was actually feeling kind of done with like just watching, like just the concept, just animals going around and being in, harrowing situations, and it all works out in the end. And I was like, I don't really feel like I want to watch the sequel. I'm sure it's fine, but even when I was a kid, everyone had told me it was darker. And my parents wouldn't let me watch it. So I'm really not sure what goes on.
One thing back to why I like the original better, is the fact that I believe the book was written by and set by a Canadian and set in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So moving it to the United States was a little disappointing, is taking that little bit away from the novel and the original movie. But I mean, that's just nitpicking, I guess. But that does set up that sequel where they're lost in San Francisco, which just in general makes me go, no.
It bugged me too that it was moved out of Canada, but we're proud Canadians. The U.S. was probably like going, no, it's ours.
Yeah.
Well, and I personally actually know friends who have lived in rural Canada where they've moved and had to give up a pet, and then the pet has made a journey like over the course of 3 weeks to like go back to their old house where they used to live. And yeah, that's happened to a couple people that I know. So, I mean, taking place in Canada, well, I know it's happened for real. Can't say the same for the States, but I mean, probably. But Canada also has way less population density, so you could also maybe believe that, animals could make a huge trek through untramped wilderness.
Yeah,
there's
as long
that
as
too,
they can avoid the predators.
Yeah, in the original story, I don't know exactly the time frame, but it didn't look like it was 63 in that original film. I mean, you had a guy running around in a Model T at one point. So, I would have figured this movie's setting was probably in the 30s and maybe the 40s. And so you have less developed cities and a lot more open terrain, small towns, and the more forested areas that haven't been cut down in modern civilization. It would have been cool if they'd done it here, because we got the Rocky Mountains here. There isn't as many mountains over in Ontario as there are here in Alberta.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe that's why they didn't do that section that I was talking about, that I was excited about them getting to the mountains. That probably explains that whole narrative choice.
Well, they would have, if they were going into California, so they were probably in the Sierras or going over the Sierras.
Oh, sorry. I meant the original. In the original, they don't get to the mountain part. The animals just show up at the end.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, they do show a little bit as they're crossing the mountain, and it's colder, and the streams are starting to ice over, and at one point they're tromping through the snow. But it is such a small part compared to the earlier parts of the journey. When they get through the top of the mountain, it seems less perilous outside of just being cold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but that's when the actors, the humans, start to manage the drama, because we've seen them go through a few events now. How much more can we put these characters through? You can go hours and hours and hours crossing mountains and whatnot. So now, by that point of the film, we're switching back to the actors and the family that now knows the pets are missing, and they're trying to slowly track down of their path and who's seen them and the sightings and whatnot. They've contacted rangers, and as they're tracking, they're like, oh, he was with this family. The cat was with this family for a little bit, but that was 2 weeks ago. And that's another great way that they're establishing timeline, because they're gone a good week before anybody even knows. We do get some sense of that in the remake, but not as much. But we do know when the family leaves the pets with that farmer that it's going to be another 2 weeks before they even come to visit.
Yeah.
One thing I will say is I think that the original one, I think, had a better setup, but I think Homeward Bound had a better finale, because I did feel like the ending in The Incredible Journey was pretty tacked on. You're watching them do, like we've kind of talked about, you're watching them do most of a journey, and then they just show up at the place that they're supposed to. And it really feels like they were able to make it to their family in Homeward Bound a lot more. But the setup is not nearly as strong. Just like we're moving, let's abandon all the family pets. Not super great motivation. It's versus the original one.
I would agree with you on both points, Jeff. Is the setup in the original was more compelling and more believable, and it made them feel a little less heartless about it. Mm-hmm. And then you're right about the end. Is that was the one thing about the original that did feel kind of sort of abrupt. It's like, okay, they've gone through all of this, and then all of a sudden they're in the backyard, and all of a sudden the animals show up. You just sort of, it feels like there was something missing. In the original, in the remake, they had that last moment of peril just before they get home, right? Mm-hmm. And that's when we see the older dog sort of finally sort of succumb to his age. And they could have done something like that with the original, where because they've already established that Bodge is struggling with this whole experience, and he's finally reached the end of his rope so close to home. I think that would have been incredibly powerful, and I think that was a missed opportunity in the original.
I think that's probably why I ultimately like Homeward Bound. I think it's just a bit more than the other one, just because, just in terms of its story, it has a lot more meat to it, especially with the whole thing at the end with Chance. No, with what was the old dog's name? We all know. Shadow. Yeah, the whole thing with Shadow falling through through that lumber. And that was really tough, especially because they're so close to the finish line. But that really did make the ending feel a lot more earned.
Yeah, no, and like I said, I do agree with that. That's the one spot where I think the remake is actually superior to the original, is that last 10 minutes or so. Although I do have to point out that these families heartbroken about losing the animals, and they're in the backyard playing basketball and laughing and having a good old time.
True.
Whereas in the original, they were still kind of moping about these lost animals.
Well, I think in the remake, I don't know, it's sort of the stepdad and the youngest child. And like he seems young enough that he's just very malleable to everything, and his focus isn't on the lost animals because he's not making a whole bunch of new memories, I don't think, at that point. Like, he's very tiny.
He is very tiny, and they may have been doing it to try and distract him from it as well. And Chance was new to the family too, right? Mm-hmm. So, and Chance was supposed to be the youngest child's companion. So they hadn't had a chance to really bond yet. So I think that might have, I mean, it wasn't particularly well established. And as a child, you probably wouldn't get that. But as an adult, I think you do. But yeah, it did feel like a bit of a false note at the end there to me.
Did you notice about halfway through the film, the remake, that Chance got bigger? Like, I don't think it was the same dog. Well, because he was quite a bit smaller than Shadow. But by later part of the film, they're like the same size. They almost stand the same height, so that pup, like, sprouted in those few weeks.
I wonder if they were actually shooting with a younger dog, or if the intention was that he actually is like a pup, like under a year old, and is growing over the course of the journey. But, I mean, it could just be a different dog that's not the same size.
Yeah, and I just assumed it was like a different dog that they were shooting with that looked similar, but it very well could have been a pup that just grew over the course of that filming, because even as a remake, I'm sure it wasn't a quick process, and if you're shooting over a few months or even just a month, a pup can sprout a lot in a few weeks.
That's true, yeah. And I didn't notice, but and I'm not going back to watch it again just to check that, just to let you know.
Because Sam is dead inside.
No, it's not being dead inside. It's just there's a lot to watch with animals dealing with crap. But I have to admit, like, one of the most perilous things is them encountering that porcupine, because that's sort of the one thing animals can't deal with on their own at all.
I'm actually surprised they didn't make more of the skunk.
Right?
In that,
I thought something was going on there, but then nothing.
Yeah, so like I would have thought they would have got sprayed, but nope, no spray. But at least they kept the porcupine in there, and that was fun. Well, not fun for the animal, but
I was actually
they just did that with spirit gums. So
yeah, they used a fake dog to get hit by the real porcupine, and then they attached needles with spirit gum. It was like really effective.
It was really effective. One thing that I noticed, and I wanted from either one of those movies, was at least one of those kids go to say, "Boy, do you ever stink." Because those dogs and that cat would have been just rank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not the cat, because cats are always cleaning themselves.
Yeah, but even after even a week in the wild, they can only get so clean, especially
the cat rather got the most water.
That's true. Yeah.
He pretty much got run through a washer.
Yeah,
I'd say especially with Chance being the young pup, like he definitely would be smelly.
They would have just stunk so bad, and that's you would want somebody, at least the smallest child, to go, "Oh, you stink," right, or something along those lines. Because one, it would have been kind of funny, and two, it would have just added one more sense of realism to the whole story.
Well, and it's not even just them getting lost in the wilderness. It's the whole thing with, like, any dog. Most of the dogs I know, they will find something that just stinks and they'll roll in it because they're like, "Oh, this is glorious."
They even mentioned that.
To do this for weeks.
They even mentioned that in the remake where there's the bear poop.
Yeah.
And Sassy's saying, "Don't you dare roll in it."
Yeah, because they want to smell gorgeous according to their own sense of smell.
Yes. There was a missed opportunity there that I think would have added a bit of levity and a little bit of realism to the whole experience at the end if they would have mentioned the condition of these animals. And they did look a little too healthy at the end, to be honest. But I mean, you can only do so much with real animals. But
yeah, you don't want to starve them and do a Christian Bale with them, right?
No.
Well, I mean, in the original one, they made a point to have somebody see the animals. Or I think it might have just been the people who rescued the cat, where they're like, "Oh, poor thing, it's half starved." You just need to have like an actor say that, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I could believe that. Sure."
It was starved. The lady who found
and they did.
Bodger.
Mm-hmm,
well, it's not. It's Bodger, and then what was the other name of the other guy? Tao Lao.
Tao was the cat, and Lueth.
Lueth, yeah, when the guy found Lueth with the porcupine needles, and then his wife found Bodger outside.
Yes.
But,
I mean, they just talked about because I don't think that the animals looked like they were starving in the original one, but they definitely talked more about how they were hungry because they were out in the wild.
Yeah, that made that ending of the original that much more interesting, because when the dog starts just pouncing all over the young kid, I'm like, he's going to eat him, isn't he? He's that hungry. He's really excited to see his boy, but at the same time...
But not for the reasons we think.
Suckling.
This is a nice, fine piece of meat. Young and tender.
You know, one thing I'm surprised that never happened in either movie was like well, I mean, I guess not surprised now that it's coming out of my mouth. Maybe it's a bit dark for a kid's movie, but to have the animals come across like another animal that had already died that's actually, you know, some other predator's prey. Because, I mean, that does happen, and that is a pretty harrowing situation, but maybe you don't want to lean into the scary stuff as much with these movies.
No, and I mean, they themselves were hunting other animals for food, so we see that far more in the original film than the remake, but, you know, they're out trying to catch a rabbit or whatever as well, but so we just don't see them as successful at feeding themselves in Homeward Bound as they were in the original film. That's the nature documentary portion of that film that kind of kicks in a little bit of, well, like, well, of course they got to eat. Everybody knows that, but it could be pretty sensitive to a young audience, which is what they were shooting for. So I can see why they took a lot of that out of Homeward Bound.
It was cool to see Tao fish, though. That was actually neat to see and an incredible journey. Oh
yeah, just swiping the fish out of the water. Yeah, Sally Field going, it's that easy.
Yeah,
you gotta like her setup too. It's like, you know how you get food by pretending you don't want it.
Oh, there was one thing I did appreciate in the remake where Chance gets to the wedding cake. And I was watching this dog. I'm like, ooh, that dog's going to throw up so much soon. And they went for it. And I was like, thank you. I just needed to know that this dog threw up because it would.
Yeah, Michael J. Fox going, I'm going to need to eat some grass.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. You know, one thing I was wondering about, and I couldn't really find much information about the recording sessions of the actors for Homeward Bound, but they must have put together a cut of the movie and then had the actors watch the movie and then read a script, also maybe with ad-libbing. Because there's a couple moments where it's like Chance is running and then stumbles, and Michael J. Fox is like, oh, Gopher Hole. And it's like, there are some improvisational feeling moments that I feel like either they would have had to pour over the footage and write a very specific script, or they would have had to be standing in a sound booth watching the movie.
I think you're probably right there with the ad-libbing because, I mean, obviously the young dog tripping. And multiple times it was, they just made Michael J. Fox's Chance just really clumsy. And they leave that footage in the film rather than shoot it again because it is a moment of levity. Trips in the gopher hole or runs into the tree.
But it also kind of denotes that he's such a puppy because puppies are so exuberant and some of them not quite sure how their bodies work yet.
No, and that breed is also somewhat clumsy, right? On top of it all. So yeah, it adds again that whole sense of connection and realism to it is. Mm-hmm. These are things that would actually happen.
Growing puppy too, you're not you're just gangly and just uncoordinated, and that happens in humans too. All right, let's go to the trailer for Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey from 1993.
From Walt Disney Pictures.
I'm gonna miss you so much.
Left Behind.
Shadow is gonna love it in the country.
Have a nice vacation!
And Far From Home. They were determined to find their way back. Now, they've set off on an adventure into an untamed world. Across treacherous mountains. Where danger waits at every turn.
I gotta tell you, domesticated animals wouldn't stand a chance out here.
And the forces of nature will test their ability to survive.
I miss Shadow, Mom.
It will be an incredible journey home.
Maybe that's where they went.
But that would be hundreds of miles.
In the classic tradition of Walt Disney Entertainment comes Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey.
Okay, this movie, the screenplay was by Caroline Thompson, who wrote Edward Scissorhands, The Addams Family, and Nightmare Before Christmas, which is crazy. Linda Wolverton also wrote the screenplay and wrote things like Maleficent, The Lion King, Clan of the Cave Bear, but most importantly, We covered it in episode 150.
Beauty and the Beast. We also covered Maleficent.
We did. Did we? Yes, we did. Why did I forget Maleficent? What episode was that?
That was episode 215.
At least I mentioned it.
Yes, at least you mentioned it.
Very memorable movie for me.
And I really liked that movie.
I do too. I've seen it more than once. I don't know why I didn't clue into that we've actually done it. But
hundreds of episodes, man. Hundreds
of episodes. It's bound to happen. This was directed by Dwayne Dunham, who did some Twin Peaks episodes and has directed has edited, Dwayne's more known as an editor, edited the upcoming The Turning, which was supposed to be this year, but like much of the other movies this year, it's taking a while to show up, so who knows when that'll turn up, but if it doesn't turn up by October, it'll probably be hitting streaming like a lot of other films. This movie stars the voices of Michael J. Fox as Chance, and we everybody knows him from Back to the Future, but we actually did get to talk about him briefly in episode 102.
One of his early roles when he was still chubby, class of 1984.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Sally Field was the voice of Sassy, the great Sally Field, and always loved her in the Smokey and the Bandit movies. That was probably my introduction to her as an actress. Don Ameche was the older dog Shadow, and we've talked about him a couple of times, actually. And this was actually one of his final roles, because he was only around another 5-6 months after shooting this, doing this voice role. So he wasn't around much longer after this, unfortunately. We did talk about him in episode 26.
I finally didn't miss this one. Oscar.
I thought I might get you again. Oscar always gets everybody. And then again in episode 68.
Trading Places.
Yes, so it has been a while since we got to talk to her about our friend Don Ameche.
I always remembered him too as, if anyone's seen Harry and the Hendersons, he's like the old Bigfoot hunter who ends up helping them rescue Bigfoot.
Yes, he is.
I always thought he was great in. So
Mariah Milner was Molly, and she was in a movie called Praying Mantis. I just like the title, so I don't know what it is. Kevin Chevalier was Jamie Seaver, was returned for Homeward Bound 2. Kim Greist was Laura Burnford Seaver. And this movie, it starts with the family and Robert Hayes getting married at the beginning. So this is a very new family as well with the pets. Yeah. But Laura was Kim Greist, and Kim Greist we have talked about many a time. The first time was in episode 99.
Manhunter Red Dragon episode.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm going to skip over the second time because I want to end with that one. But and then we talked about in episode 190, Throw Mama from the Train.
Yes, we did.
And once again in episode 162, the one that keeps haunting us.
6 Degrees of Chud.
That's right.
Wow. The most unexpected movies connect to Chud.
It really does. And I'm like, wow, we got Chud and Homeward Bound. We will have to develop it, I think.
That means that there's 1 degree of separation between Homeward Bound and both Martyrs.
Yeah.
Robert Hayes, of course, was Bob Seaver, and we've talked about him in episode 93.
0 Hour versus Airplane. Yeah.
Airplane, from the Airplane. And he was actually one of my first voices of Iron Man as well, if anybody remembers the 90s Iron Man animated series. Mm-hmm. He was a very good Iron Man. Veronica Lauren was Hope Burnford, and she was in Forever Young. And Sam, were you ever on set with her? Because she was in Return to the Lonesome Dove.
I don't know. I was only on the set for 1 day, so.
Oh.
I did. Yeah.
Well, then you're nobody important at all.
No, but I was on set with Lee Majors.
That's wicked cool.
I thought so too.
I would not even remembered Veronica if I was on set with her, and not if Lee Majors was in the room.
Exactly.
William Phipps was Quentin, and man, he's come up a couple of times. First time was in episode 130.
Keep going. I didn't catch that.
Okay, that was War of the Worlds, and then 194.
Didn't get that one either. I missed him entirely, apparently.
Invaders from Mars. And I can understand why, because you would have hit it and gone, 300 credits. Fuck that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Jean Smart was Kate, and you could catch her most recently in the Watchmen television series. And Benji Thal was Peter, who was in Repossessed. And the dogs were Ben, Rattler, and Tiki.
Yeah.
Well, and the cat.
Yeah, I don't know if we were looking at the same list, because I had another name on there that you didn't mention.
There was a bunch of characters, like really minor characters that I just skipped over, the moms and dads and things like that, of neighbors and whatnot. So I did skip over a lot of them if they were generically listed and didn't get bothered having a name. There was a couple I had on my list and then I just crossed them out because they weren't worth mentioning.
Yeah, no, the only reason I mentioned it because I did find it. I always go by the first build.
Well, once I noticed that the billing was completely out of order on IMDb, then I just kind of moved myself around it.
Oh, okay, that's why you didn't get Rich Hawkins then. Okay.
Yeah, no, the billing was like all screwed up because Don Ameche was near the end of it, and I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense.
Well, yeah, you had to go in the full cast even to get it.
No,
but yeah, that was probably the most messed up IMDb listing I've ever seen, actually.
Yeah, no, so I kind of had to okay, well, if Robert Hayes plays Bob Seaver, then all the Seavers are probably worth mentioning. That's kind of how I worked it, because usually I make my cast list before I watch the movie, so I'm not always aware of who's important and who isn't. But did you find a connection in somebody I didn't mention?
Yeah, Richard Hawkins was in The Vanishing, episode 146.
Oh, there you go. Another good episode.
Yes, a very good episode. I really enjoyed watching those ones again.
Yes, another harrowing journey.
Yes, two harrowing journeys.
Called The Harrowing Journey.
The Harrowing Journey sounds ominous and slightly like a horror movie. Yeah.
The Harrowing Journey should just be like the documentary about this guy's career, because he's in like two of the worst ones.
Well, we'll use that as the setup for October when we get into lots of horror movies.
Yes, The Harrowing Journey. That's perfect.
31 Days of Horror 2020, The Harrowing Journey.
Actually, no. It should just be 2020, The Harrowing Journey.
Yes, I think everybody at this point.
Yeah, these animals are getting out more than most people, so maybe that's how my sympathy goes away.
Mm-hmm. Well, Homeward Bound, other than being a remix, did add a couple of things once in a while, just for humor's sake, like when the crawfish grab Chance by the face.
Mm-hmm.
I love
the subplot with the missing girl, too.
Oh, yes. That was brand new.
Yes, and that was really powerful, actually. That worked really well for me.
That kind of replaced the golden retriever grabbing the duck for the duck hunter.
Yes.
And let's just take that out. We're like, wow, I didn't find a dead duck. We found a live little girl. So now we add some heroism for our animals.
Yeah, it was one of the things that they added that worked really well for me in the remake. And then they added this whole subplot of the whole dynamic of a stepfather sort of trying to fit into a new family with the older boy, and that dynamic between them, and I liked that. And
and Peter blames him as well for the animals going missing in the first place because of the temporary work assignment that he's got.
Yeah, and then he acts like he doesn't care.
Yeah.
Like all of the actor parts in Homeward Bound, I think, were better acted and more fleshed out in general.
Well, yeah, because the story's about the animals in the incredible journey. It's not about the people.
What are you talking about? The hermit was fantastic.
He was.
The hermit was great,
but it wasn't. Again, it wasn't about them. It was about how their experience with him went, and that's what. And the characters were just there the human characters were just there to sort of fill out the story a little bit.
Yeah, I did kind of miss an insane character like that hermit in the remake, because it was like. Okay, he set the table for the animals that don't know to go up to the table to eat it, so he just works his way around eating the food before he can't eat anymore.
Yeah, and it was a very entertaining scene, and that they could have had a lot of fun with that because Chance doesn't have that filter. He hasn't been trained not to eat off the table yet, so you could have had a fun moment there where he gets up and eats off the table.
Oh yeah, because we do see Chance even eating Sassy's food because it's like, hey, snooze, you lose.
Yeah, so they had a fun moment to do a nice twist on a scene from the original movie that they missed. There are some missed opportunities, obviously, in any remake, but this one that seems like a really obvious one that was missed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I just don't know if there were many hermits in like '93. Like in the '60s, it seems to strike me that there was just a lot more of them around.
Yeah, because in the 60s, you'd have people who were born before the 1900s who are probably just holdouts from, pre-civilized, there being phones and running cars. And they're just like, well, I'm going to live in the woods because that's what my pappy did.
I had a distant uncle who was a notorious hermit in our family until he passed away. But he lived in this like small sandstone house in the middle of like farmland in rural Canada, and had very little connection to the family unless he traveled into it in one of the small towns. But yeah, he was just known as the hermit relative.
Crazy.
Yeah. And yeah, you go through his house and it looked like everything was from like the 30s and 40s.
So, I mean, they still exist. And I mean, there are eccentrics out there who do like to sort of be away from people. So, I mean, they could have made it work if they tried hard enough.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess there is the hermit who rescues Sassy.
Yeah, he's sort of on his own. That doesn't. He's replacing the family that finds Tao.
Yeah, I think he was more of a naturalist, and I think it was kind of a research hut for him because you saw him with his microscope and stuff. But I think he was the change up there, and that's what like I said, it's like a deck of cards that's been mixed up. Mm-hmm. Is because, instead of putting Sassy with the family, which I always felt bad about in the original film, every time I see it, it's like then the cat, the family gets attached to the cat, and then the cat goes off when Tao hears the other dogs barking. And, I mean, something similar happens here, but you really feel bad about it in the original film because the little girl is so attached to the cat.
In a very short period of time, because she's there for less than 24 hours, or he's there for less than 24 hours.
Yeah.
And I think that may be why they changed it, because
I always felt bad for the little girl.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. But I mean, they do say in the sort of the narration, the cat's like, well, you can't really say goodbye, so
it's true.
I'll take off and it won't be harmful to her. Like, she'll just wake up and I'm not there. I mean, it's a very cat thing to do. Like, I mean, we've heard of these cats that have like 4 families, and every single one of them thinks they're the only ones who own this cat.
That's true.
People, there's that saying that people don't own cats. Cats choose to stay with people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're their servant. That's just what happens.
That's exactly right.
Cats have a litter of humans.
Mm-hmm. They have subjects. That's what it is. Like, dogs have masters. Cats.
I don't know
subjects.
if I'm a subject to my cats. But I mean, I do think cats are a lot more affectionate than people realize. What Sam was saying is very true. It's like you have to earn a cat's trust, and then the cat has like chosen you as its family.
Yeah, cats are far more independent, and they are very particular about who they spend their time with. And people have different roles for cats too. I used to have a cat. You remember Egypt, Jay? And I mean, he would not play with me. Mike was the play person, right? With the roughhousing and stuff like that. For cuddles and affection, that was me. And Tyler, when Tyler lived with us, was the sleeping bag.
Right.
He used to love just to climb up on Tyler and fall asleep.
I remember you giving me shit once because I hypnotized it.
Yes.
He's like, what the hell are you doing to my cat? And all it was just like, had my hand, but not touching it. And it would just go down as I got closer. It would just stay that far away from my hand and then flop over. It's like, I don't know what to do with this.
And cats cats and dogs, like, they all kind of have their own distinct personalities. Like, I've known cats where I'm pretty sure they thought they were dogs. Like, they'd come when you'd call them. They were really super, like, affectionate. And then I've had dogs that have been standoffish. It's very, they are their own beings.
It depends a lot on, like, really the environment that they're living in the first, like, 2-3 years of their life will pretty much shape, basically, their personality. Like, there's a lot of instances of if an animal is the only animal of its species and it's around other animals, it'll just learn from the animals that it's close to because that's all it knows. So, yeah, having cats that act like dogs probably was around a lot of dogs when they were younger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's some of the most entertaining stuff I've been passing time with on the internet. Is like the dogs who think they're cats, and there's like pictures of these dogs on top of the fridge, on top of the counter. They just don't know any better. They're like, I'm a cat, right?
Yeah, Leah, actually, she grew up on a ranch, and she's mentioned a couple times how they used to have a cow that thought it was a dog, and it would just hang out with all of their ranch dogs, and then when they were feeding the dogs, the calf would just like run up and get food with the rest of them and try to come inside. Just thought it was one of the boys.
Oh, that's awesome.
I can see how that would be problematic as the calf grows into a cow.
Yeah.
No, off the bed.
Yeah, and pigs domesticate too. We used to have one when I was a kid that was more affectionate than some of the dogs we had.
Oh, I had a neighbor who had like a little pot-bellied pig, and this is rural Calgary. Like, this is like actually fairly city center where I lived. So
before they changed the bylaw saying you can't have them anymore.
Oh,
yeah,
that I didn't know.
When you're growing up, it was like the George Clooney era, where they're like, Clooney has a pig, I can have a pig. I remember that being very popular for a while, because everybody was all up, oh, George Clooney has a pig, so that's awesome.
Yeah, I do remember that when that was like the pet du jour.
Yeah.
We're getting a little off track, but yeah, pigs are good pets because they can live up to 30 years. So if you want a sort of a pet that's going to stay with you for a long time, pigs aren't a bad choice.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Parrots are bad because they'll outlive you.
They'll outlive you, yeah. But I mean, I don't...
Depends on the parrot.
It does, yeah. But I don't want a pig sleeping in my bed with me like a cat or a dog might. Right?
Yeah, right.
There is that.
I guess it depends on what your house looks like. If it's a sty, you know.
Yeah, most definitely not.
Well, my house might work.
What, you have your little house cleaner?
I have my Roomba. I have Freddie. But I think even Freddie can't help me now.
So basically, out of sussing out this conversation, is there going to be a new Incredible Journey starring a pig, a Roomba, and a parrot?
I would see that. I would totally go see that.
Okay, so now this is morphed into a remake episode. What will we do with this, guys? The Roomba would not last very long without a charge. I'm just going to put that up there.
Oh, so that's the keeping it powered and fed.
So basically, Roomba is Shadow.
Yeah, that's how you have to feed Freddy, is you have to, let him clean up stuff, but you have to plug him in.
I could just see him bumping into the bear paw.
No.
So ridiculous.
And the Roomba becomes a Frisbee.
Yeah. Or... okay, so it's like the pig. So like maybe it's not like a hugely big pig, but the pig gets on it to look bigger and then moves towards the bear.
Oh boy.
I guess the Roomba would be the cat because it's always cleaning.
True.
Yeah.
Then the parrot would be Chance because it's always talking.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Gotta go home. Gotta go home. Actually, it would be interesting because then the parrot would probably meet some of the people. The parrot's like, I'm Peter. Gotta go home.
He would have been there in a day or two and be like, where is everybody? What do you mean you can't fly?
Yeah, the parrot goes and gets them. He's like, dogs in peril, dogs in peril.
Pig in a poke.
Move Roomba to another location.
If everybody out there loves this idea, please let us know.
We can start recording the voiceovers now.
Yeah, the real question is, who's the voice of the Roomba?
Well, his name is Freddie. I don't know. I kind of see him. I hear him in my head probably more closely. The closest one is Sam's voice.
Okay.
I guess I'm a Roomba.
You are.
I can do a robotic voice.
See, you're perfect. You're a Freddie.
Well, we've got 100 episodes, several hundred episodes to prove that true.
Fuck you.
Oh.
I was just lying right there, man. I was lying right there.
I know it was. But still, fuck you.
Okay, any more thoughts about Homeward Bound and an Incredible Journey?
I thought it was interesting that they added the Pound subplot where it's like the false ending where the family thinks that the animals are rescued and they're on their way and they're happy, and then they get loose again because they think it's doggy jail. That was a kind of a cool story beat to add to the story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, and the jailbreak is good too.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't quite dig the Mission Impossible thing. It was getting a bit too cheesy for me.
Using the Mission Impossible music, too.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, right.
Oh, the music was too much, but I liked the idea of a jailbreak.
Yeah, I didn't mind a jailbreak.
They did do it in the original. It just they added that element where they were notified that the animals had been found, and that did add something for sure, because in the original, they did have the jailbreak where the farmer had locked them in the barn. Mm-hmm. And Tal did to get them out, so there was that jailbreak moment, but it
was less perilous.
Yeah,
it was much less perilous.
a little more believable, to be honest.
Yeah, it felt a little crazy because now like your animal control people feel like it was most time. This is the first time where I felt like we actually had villains in the movie for that shouldn't have been because they're there to help them. So
I actually thought that was interesting too because you don't even see them. I mean, as far as I could remember, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you see them do anything that's, really nefarious. Like, they are trying to help the animals.
Yeah. They get that one guy who gets a little...
kicks in.
Yeah, he gets frustrated, but they're treated like villains in the way it's portrayed. I didn't like that much, to be honest.
No, I didn't like this Sally Fields or Sassy's sort of insulting tone towards that animal control officer either.
Fat shaming him.
Yeah, and I mean, it probably wouldn't have felt as uncomfortable in '93 when we weren't sort of as in touch with how negative that is, right? And I mean, it's a shame that we weren't, but now that we are, it just felt really uncomfortable.
Yeah,
right. I mean, that's not.
I wouldn't say that it was uncomfortable. It was just not good.
No, it was insensitive, not uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But then I don't know. It's not like the human could hear the cat.
No, but even putting something like that into a children's movie where it suggests that that's okay to call over people names, right? Even though that's probably the way a cat would think.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, to be fair, that is almost exactly the way a cat would think, but they sort of in insulting terms. But that doesn't make it necessarily all right.
And it's not a far stretch to have a kid watch a movie and then be on the playground the next day and call somebody a lardo or something. You know?
There's a few fat shaming moments in this movie, not just that bit. But it made me wonder. It's sort of funny, the addition of it, and I know they're not hurting the animals, they're trying to help them, but they have a whole row of other animals that are in there. And it's sort of like I never get to hear like their interstitials, like except for the cat calls.
Yes.
Good call. That's actually, great call on that one.
Yeah, no, and I noticed that too,
There should be something there.
Yeah, aside from the really lazy joke about cat calls.
Yeah. Because, I mean, we know that Shadow and Chance are just staying there until their owners come to get them. But, I mean, what about these other animals? Maybe they're behind bars for crimes they didn't commit.
Well, yeah. And, I mean, we know that with shelters, actually not even some, there's a lot of animals that don't make it out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in the U.S. Yeah, the U.S. is a little more willing to euthanize animals because of the sheer volume of them, I suspect, is probably part of it. For example, here in Calgary, animals are very rarely euthanized. They're usually adopted out or held until they can be.
We have a lot of really good animal rescue groups in this province and also in Canada in general that do a pretty good job at that. Lots of foster families over here. It's
unreal, and there's right now it's impossible to find a dog to foster, let alone adopt.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one thing. This whole coronavirus, the fostering has gone through the roof because people are available to be there for the animals to help them kind of transition outside of the clink.
Yeah, and I hope that this ends up in forever homes for most, if not all, of these dogs for sure, and cats.
And that's actually the good message of Homeward Bound is Chance was a rescue.
Absolutely.
So to have this even in '93, it's a really great animal message. And if you've ever had a pet that is transitioning to a new family, especially one that's been traumatized, there's a big change for the animal itself. We had a pup that we figured was abused because it would just cower for a good for its first year or so at anything, and then it became the bravest thing in the world. But because it was with a loving family that would have never hurt it. But you could tell it was mistreated as a puppy.
Yeah,
because it was and it was sad. Yeah, but that's what's this movie's kind of about as well. This dog, there was no abuse that we're told, but he was abandoned, and that in and of itself is abuse. So for that trauma to be revisited on a dog that thinks he's being abandoned, and that's what sparks this journey in the first place.
Yeah, that was actually a really, really, like, just in terms of a story writing standpoint, Chance's arc through the movie of, oh no, not again, like, I liked this family, I'm being abandoned again, and then at the very beginning of the movie, he talks about how, he likes this new family, but there's something like maybe missing. Like he's not quite sure yet. And then at the very end, when he's found his family again, he's so happy to see them that like for the first time, it really does feel like his family.
Yeah, he's being defensive and even dismissive of them because he doesn't think it's just another temporary stop for him. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of sad. But if you've had a rescue like that, so you can sometimes it takes a while for them to get acclimated and go, oh, this is my home. And it's weird that we put it in those kind of terms, but you can feel it, you can sense it when you're around animals.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, we both of our two oldest cats were both rescues who were both like around 3 when we rescued them at different times, or when we adopted them from the shelter. And definitely, like both of them have carried a bunch of baggage into our house when we first got them. And I know especially for our oldest cat, Lily, she did not have like a good situation before and was pretty traumatized, but they're super sweet. But compared to now, like we adopted from a farm, like a little kitten, there's actually a huge difference. Like both of our other cats were carrying in a lot of baggage from their previous homes when we adopted them that have since mostly gone away, but they still have it with them even today. That's not present at all in like a kitten who hasn't been hurt or doesn't know to be afraid yet.
Yeah.
And that is never given a reason to be afraid.
Absolutely. And I think that's the main thing with rescue dogs or rescue pets in general is they're, regardless of the situation they came from, they're definitely probably have been in situations where they've been afraid or have been hurt or have been confused. And, they need arguably more love because of it.
Yeah. And it's the other part of like the Homeward Bound where Chance is sort of paired up with that very, very young boy. Like at the very beginning with the frog, Chance is like, he's got some pretty good ideas. Mm-hmm. Like it's interesting because I'm seeing how he could attach to somebody like that because this kid would be the one who gets him.
Yeah.
He does understand his need for destruction and fun. And that's why they kind of match.
Yeah, because they're growing up together in the same situation, right? They're just discovering the world together.
Yeah. The animals you have when you're like a little kid, when you first like have a pet and that you sort of grow up together, like that's the strangest bond that I don't know. It's hard to recreate. Mm-hmm. But it's so weird because like this is my best friend. This is not an animal. This is my best bud of all time. We go out on adventures together all day. Mm-hmm. And it's a beautiful thing when a child has their buddy that they talk to all the time and they just have fur. That's just what happens.
That's right. So yeah, consider donating to your local SPCA to save an animal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And definitely
or rescue, don't adopt.
Yes,
definitely.
Yeah.
Rescue and bring some more love into your life. It'll be great. You'll love them, they'll love you.
Yeah, if you're trapped
wonderful.
at home feeling lonely, this might be the time to think about it.
Everybody wins.
That's right.
I can definitely say I've been reaping the rewards of spending a lot of time with my cats since this craziness has happened. So
yeah, I can't say I'm at home any more than I was before. So for me, as much as I'm a dog person and an animal lover, living alone, I've never had a pet because I'm just not around enough to. I don't think that's fair on my part. But yeah, one day when I'm slow down a little bit, then maybe, or if I'm cohabitating, then there's always somebody around to help the pet out. But until that time, I don't know, fish maybe.
I don't know. I think when I'm older,
Roomba.
I might just Roomba.
We know.
Yeah, when I'm older and my Roomba can't work anymore, I'll just get an older animal, and then we can just be old together.
Yeah, we now know that robots can also fill that void.
Yes.
I used to have a digipet. I had a Rancor monster would feed people. Yeah, it was a Star Wars theme Tamagotchi.
That's awesome.
And it died of old age. So I took very good care of it. It was very happy and well fed with human beings.
Nice. That is perfect.
I'm like, that is very me.
Yeah. That is very you.
He's in a box. Maybe someday I'll breed a new one. Yeah, if everybody's going to have a pet giant monster, it'll be me.
Nice.
And speaking of...
Did you realize that's how Jurassic Park started? I do believe somebody's like, hey, I'd love a pet dinosaur, and then he just went and did it, and then shit went wrong.
But it's not going to be anything like that.
It never is, Jay. It never is.
It becomes self-aware, and then shit happens.
And maybe any and all of those things will happen during our 31 Days of Horror. We're just mere weeks away now.
Yes.
So we're going to be starting our 31 Days of Horror. And if you want to join us on our 31 Days of Horror challenge, the way we do it, you don't have to do it, but the way we do it, we'll watch a horror movie a day, and it'll be a horror movie we've never seen before. And then we will report back to you of our findings in late October, early November, and each of us will go through our list. But we can share out your lists as well if you want to join us in this challenge. So make a list, and at the end of October, send it to us, and we'll try to read a grip of them on the show. And we're also going to be participating in All the Horror in October as well, which is a massive podcast crossover. Not just podcasters, but there's going to be some written stories and some artwork as well. Lots of content to consume daily in October, with a new podcast dropping every single day, guesting one of the other participating podcasts. And so that's why it's a big crossover event, and it's going to be going through all sorts of different podcasts. We'll have a couple episodes, but as everybody knows, we're going to be doing All the Horror all month long regardless who's on this show. But we'll definitely have some special guests on a couple of our remake episodes in October. So you want to tune in and make sure you follow at All the Horror 18 to get daily updates on what you should listen to next.
Yeah, and don't forget, they also have a Facebook group and page and an Instagram.
There you go. So follow them on all their social medias. And follow us on all of our social medias. We are at Invasion Remake on Twitter, Invasion the Remake on Facebook and Instagram, and Invasion of the Remake at gmail.com. If you want to email us your suggestions, your corrections, your comments, and even your fan challenges. We do have a few waiting in the wings, but we're now kind of getting into our busy season of horror scheduling and stuff like this. So if you've already dropped us a challenge, don't worry, we haven't forgot about you. We will get to it at some point, but we'll be looking at November into next year as we start chiseling away at our list. But don't worry, we haven't forgotten about you. We will get some, and we want some more too. So, but the more we accumulate, the longer it's going to take to get to yours. That's just the way it is. And we can't always do everybody's right away. So we'll try to get them out as quick as we can. And don't feel like you can't, if you don't want to give us like a remake challenge, you can always ask us to cover something that has been remade as a comparison episode as well. And it's less challenging, but we can certainly get it out there, and we'll drop your name on the episode as well for recommending it. And another way you can help us out is just shout us out. Shout us out at the top of your lungs. Recommend us to friend and foe and everybody in between, and help get more
earballs on
the show. You can find us on our Central Hub, on our Wix site. Sam, what is that Wix site address?
That is invasionofTheRemake.wixsite.com/podcast.
That's right, and there you can find a fairly comprehensive list of places you can find us with links, and of course most of the episodes have the top 6 providers in there, but there's plenty more on the big page. I think Sam's got over 20 links there that you can find. We have dropped our YouTube, so you won't be able to find full episodes on YouTube anymore, just the occasional clip from time to time. We'll try to keep it alive, but full episodes won't be dropping there anymore. But there's lots of alternatives. We're everywhere, and I don't know if it's in Canada just yet, but Audible and Amazon Music have dropped their podcast portals. We're there now. One more place to find Invasion of the Remake, along with Google Play, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere. You really got to be avoiding us if you can't find us. So recommend us to your friends. They can find us on most podcatchers out there.
Yeah, we are literally invading everywhere. So you should not be able to avoid us.
We are invading your ear holes every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday.
I had something to say, but it was going to be rude.
What's never stopped you before?
I know. We're going to get it all up in your earballs.
Oh, It's a little rude, but that's all right.
Feel free to cut
It's
it.
very personal. I'm not going to cut that. We have that personal touch. Sometimes it can get maybe a little too touchy. I don't know.
That's a little too personal.
A little too personal. Buy me dinner first. Hey, and we also have a TeePublic store with some cool swag on there and more coming. Jeff's been hard at work on the Omega collection, but until then, you can survive 31 Days of Horror with 3 designs, actually more than that, of I survived 31 Days of Horror. You can also be that person who's in that thing that one time. Yeah, you can. Mm-hmm. And we've also got some really cool PPE masks as well for your looking cool during the pandemic.
Yes.
I mean, if you're going to protect yourself, you might as well look good doing it, right? Just saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can you wear your personality on a shirt? It's different times now. You can wear your personality on your face.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, I actually had somebody recently going, "Hey, yeah, you've got a podcast. What is it?" I'm like, "It's literally on my face." I was wearing my mask at the time. I'm like, "It's this."
Yeah, it's not a talk to the hand situation. It's a talk to the face
talk
situation.
To the face situation, which puts your eyes right where they should be.
You can look at my boobs anytime.
That's right.
There you go.
Look at my mask.
My mask is up here, guys.
That could be a t-shirt.
Mask is up here, guys. The boobs are the mask for the boobs.
And then the mask points back down. I'm like, my boobs are down here.
My boobs are down here.
It would be so confusing. Somebody's like eye line is stuck at your throat.
Wouldn't it be funny? You had like a t-shirt that's like, I'm that person who was in that thing that one time pointing up, and then you have a mask that says, hey, look at my shirt. Two conflicting messages.
That's a very, very specific message to be putting on some merchandise, but
yeah, some of these may be at TeePublic on our TeePublic store, and others may not. TeePublic.com, they have sales often, so sign up to get alerts on the sales on our store. And we are teepublic.com/user/invasion-of-the-remake.
No dash.
No dash. You're done. Then you can hit enter.
Yeah.
And then
or you can just go to our website and click on store, and it takes you right there too.
Boom. It's
easier.
That's
Dash
much easier. And yeah, we post on our social media all the time about the TeePublic store, so I'm sure you will just be able to scroll through and find a link.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Well, this was an incredible journey and a delightful romp with household pets.
Yeah. It made me miss petting like furry, loving animals.
Made me miss contact of any sort.
True. Yeah, cuddling with a pillow isn't quite cutting it.
No, but it definitely made me miss having a pet. It's been many, many years since I've had one. I've had cats, but they don't give you the attention when you want them, and then I've had lots of dogs who give you too much attention when you don't want it. So
there's that balance, isn't it?
So maybe the Roomba might be the way to go. Just get it a furry sweater.
Well, you just need to get one of those animals that Jeff was talking about, a cat that was brought up with dogs.
There you go.
Or a dog brought up with cats.
Well, and my little kitten, Bella, I don't know what it is, but he basically demands that he's on your lap at all times, so it's great. Actually, he's been on my lap this whole podcast.
Aww.
Oh, the 5th member invasion of the remake.
Yay.
I'm sure if you go through some past episodes, you might be able to find some hidden purrs along the way as well.
Yeah.
Very likely.
Too bad we didn't have like pet t-shirts. That'd be like, I'm the pet from that movie that one time.
My dog was that dog in that thing you saw that one time. Or something.
Yes.
That's right. Oh, maybe we'll get TeePublic onto some pet clothing.
That would be awesome.
There you go. All right. Well, until that miracle happens, I've been Jason.
I'm always Sam.
I continue to be Trish.
And I am Jeff Omega.
And we are out of here.
was Shadow's victory, really. His belief was the thing that got us through. And in that moment, I saw the years lift from him. He was a puppy again, reunited with his best friend.
Shadow. Oh, it's good to see you, boy.
As we turned to go inside the house, a strange, new feeling came over me. I had a family. And I had found out that sacrifice and friendship and even love were more than just the mushy stuff.
Come on, James, come inside.
At last, for the first time in my life, I was home.
Turkey! Turkey, 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 turkey.